Genesis chapter 33 today, and we're going to title it Wisdom, Humility, and Gentleness, okay? In chapter 32, as he was heading back to his homeland, Jacob got word that his brother Esau was coming out after him with 400 men. And so no doubt he was somewhat fearful, and Jacob then began to plan for the worst and pray for the best. So we're brought to this moment of contention here. We never quite got to it last week. Will Esau try to kill Jacob, as it appears to Jacob that he may? Or will they be reconciled to one another and forget everything that had happened in the past? Also in this chapter, we are going to see qualities in Jacob that we should emulate. Wisdom, as the title says here, wisdom, humility, and gentleness. Okay, by his use of wisdom and humility, Jacob will avoid unneeded controversy and disaster here in this chapter. And by use of his gentleness, as we're going to see, Jacob gently leads his little ones and his flocks to safety. All right, so keep those in mind as we're reading through here, and look at what Jacob does, and try to align that with your life as well. Okay, let's get into the word here. Genesis 33 verse 1, and Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau came, and with him 400 men. Okay, you don't have 400 men with you unless they're with you for war usually. Okay, 400 men is a small war party here. And he divided the children unto Leah and unto Rachel and unto the two handmaids. So again, right now Jacob doesn't know if these 400 men and Esau are coming to kill him or what they're going to do. So he's preparing for the worst. He didn't just sit back and say, I'm going to wait for God to tell me what to do. He's actually being proactive. Now, is he going to trust in God? Yes, we know he does trust in God because he made a prayer to God in the last chapter asking him for deliverance and protection from Esau. But at the same time, Jacob is he's using his own mind, and he's still doing things. He's still using common sense to protect his family. Verse 2, and he put the handmaids and their children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hindermost. Now this is interesting. Is Jacob showing favoritism here? We can see here he's lining up the handmaids and their children first. So if there was a battle to break out, they would be the first ones to die. And then after that, Leah, his least favorite wife, then her and her children may get it next. But then Rachel and Joseph, they're in the most protected spot. They would hope, maybe Jacob's thinking they have time to flee if something really bad happens. That's one possibility. He could have been playing favoritism. Another possibility is that Jacob this was the order of how things would be done in rank. The children of the handmaid would be least in rank as far as family inheritance goes and things like that. And he was just simply following the order of rank. I don't know. I mean, it's just speculation whether or not he was showing favoritism. We do know that he did show favoritism to Rachel in the past, so I wouldn't discount it now. But so I think it really does show that Jacob was not this perfect person too. He's going to do a lot of extraordinary things in this chapter that may not seem extraordinary on the surface, but the outcome he achieves is extraordinary. But you can't expect all of God's best servants or some of his most heroic servants to be perfect people. Okay, we're not perfect today. They weren't perfect back then. All right, continuing on. Verse 3, and he passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground. Now he's meeting Esau now and the 400 men. And he bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Okay, now notice Jacob did go, even though he put the handmaid and the handmaids and their children first, Jacob did go in front of all of them. So it does show that he's not just saying, I don't care about the handmaids and their children. He loved his whole family. It's obvious that he did. But we can see here he did man up and he went before them to meet Esau. As a good shepherd should do, is to put your life in between the lives of those you're protecting. Okay? So important. This is be important for every man of their house, every husband, to put your life in front of the lives, or to between the lives of your children. In other words, if there's danger, you put yourself on the line. You try to protect them. That is the duty of a husband and a man of the family. All right. So it seems like Jacob. It almost seems a little bit overboard. It almost seems a little weak or wimpish, or maybe even a little pathetic. He's bowing down 7 times or whatever. But I don't think it is. This was kind of a standard greeting. Most scholars believe this was typical homage that you would pay to powerful men and leaders and kings. You would go through this ritual. So Jacob is merely just showing respect to Esau. It is his older brother. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. And he's submitting himself. He's actually submitting himself before Esau. And that's important. It's an important lesson that we need to learn today. There are times in our life where we need to submit to worldly authorities to further the kingdom of God. Now, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We don't go walk around and bow down to everybody, people that mistreat us and all that. Okay, that's one problem. One thing that people get caught up in when studying the Bible. They see one example of something like this, and they try to apply it to everything in life. They say, I'm going to bow down and just respect everybody. No, being a Christian is a tactical thing. You are actually a tactical warrior. Sometimes when furthering the kingdom of God, humility and submission are actually wise tools to use in order to get by and further God's work without getting hindered, without getting caught up in unnecessary conflict and things like that. So, anyways, obviously here, Jacob is another reason he's submitting to Esau is no doubt he's trying to. Well, you remember in the last chapter, he sent all these gifts out to Esau in waves. He was trying to calm his brother's nerves, maybe appease him, and make sort of a peace offering with him. Because in Esau's mind, Jacob just stole 20 years ago, Jacob stole the birthright and stole his blessing from him. So Jacob, in a sense here, is trying to make him feel better about it and is offering himself in humility and making a peace offering with him. Okay, he's doing everything he can to make reconciliation, in other words, instead of being combative. Verse 4, and Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Now, like I've been saying throughout this book of Genesis, if we had some good people in Hollywood, they could make some of the best movies that have ever been made. I mean, think about this. All the drama that led up to this moment, and the tension. You'd be thinking Esau's still mad, he's going to kill him, and then all of a sudden, unexpectedly, Esau has this huge change of heart, and he hugs his brother, cries on his shoulder, and is so happy to see him. Here, actually, we know Esau is an example of in the Bible, even in the New Testament, Esau is used as an example of a profane, worldly type person. But here, Esau actually is showing a very good quality. He's forgiving, and he loves his brother. And we have a lot of people like that today that are somewhat decent people. They're really worldly people, but they can have their good moments. They can still, they're not like terribly evil people all the time just because they're worldly. They can still show tremendous grace like Esau is here. Now think about this. Had not Jacob used wisdom in sending those gifts and now bowing down to Esau 7 times, we might be looking at a totally different situation. Esau's temper may have even got more. Think of it from Esau's perspective. You're a worldly person. Your brother took your birthright and your blessing from you, and you think you deserve that. And now he comes and he's disrespecting you, he's not showing any remorse for what had happened. That you could see the immediate, probably emotional response to Esau would be anger and, okay, after all these years, you're still, treat me like this, and it could have been a terrible thing, not only for Jacob, but for his entire family. So Jacob averted catastrophe here by using wisdom, okay? And he humbled himself. This takes a lot for us to do at times. Sometimes we get mad at people, or we think, we're too important, or we're too special to have to submit to various earthly authorities. And that could lead to the detriment of our character, our reputation, as well as Christianity as a whole. If Christians are walking around being high-minded and bitter all the time towards other people. All right. And Jacob could have done this, right? Because Jacob knew, I have the birthright, I have the blessings. God came to me in a dream. I saw angels descending and ascending from this ladder. I wrestled with God himself, and God gave me a new name, Israel. That means the prince that prevails with God. So Jacob could have went in there with that mentality to Esau and thought, I'm this very special person. I'm God's chosen. I'm one of his elect. And Esau, he's just a worldly sinner, worthless weasel boy, if Jacob would have had that attitude, which I see a lot of sincere Christians unfortunately get into that mentality where I'm way better than them, I don't have to listen to them and whatever. They don't know the Bible, they've never studied the Bible, they're stupid, that kind of thing. If Jacob would have had that attitude, this entire situation would have blown up. But no, Jacob used wisdom, okay? Now that doesn't mean, now think about this. There were times when Jesus submitted himself to earthly authorities in order to further the cause of the kingdom. He didn't get caught up in unnecessary quarrels and disputes. But at the same time, now think about this. You don't want to take this verse and become one of these Christians that just bows down to everybody. Oh, I know, whatever. Jesus actually at times provoked the Pharisees to battle. Okay? So there are times where we actually are to take out the sword of truth. There are times when we're supposed to get into a heated conflict with hypocrites, liars, deceivers, and whatnot. But we must be wise enough, skilled enough as a Christian to know when those times are. This wasn't the time for Jacob to be like that towards Esau, okay? And there were times in Jesus' life here on the earth where it wasn't time to do that, but there were times where there was time for combative arguments and things like that. In fact, Jesus paid the price for the combative argument he had with the Pharisees 2 weeks before his death. The reason he was brought up and killed is because he just laid it out on them. You Pharisees, you hypocrites, you children of vipers, and he just called them every name in the book. Even made fun of their clothes. Even made fun of the clothes they were wearing. They were wearing Bible verses all over their clothes, because they wanted to look really holy and religious. And he mocked them for that. So, let's not try to get a one-size-fits-all on humility, wisdom, and gentleness. But let's not degrade them either and say, all we're going to do is walk around and hack people with the Word of God, There's maturity. You see in Jacob here, he had, think about all the life experiences he went through. He wasn't a fresh servant of God, okay? He had been through a lot of things. And he had that spiritual maturity where and it took some time. Had this been done earlier on in Jacob's life, like the time that he took the birthright from him and his mom, got the blessing, strategized to get the blessing away from Esau. Had this been earlier on in his life, Jacob would have never handled this situation with this amount of humility and wisdom. Okay? He just wouldn't have been able to do it. God takes us on this growth process where we're going through this, we experience different things, we do stupid things, and we learn from those things, and we try not to to do those things over and over again, and we try to get more skilled as we go on in our Christian walk. All right. Anyways, moving on. Verse 5. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the women and the children, and said, this is Esau, who are these, or who are those with thee? And he said, the children which God hath graciously given thy servant. Notice, now Jacob look at the value he places on his children here. He looks at children as gifts from God. And he didn't just say, these are my children. Didn't I do a great job? I got 4 wives. You know, and that's what happens when you have 4 wives. You have lots of children. No, he didn't do that. He said, these are the children which God hath graciously given me. Now, and that's important. I mean, Jacob, we're going to see here, is a shepherd. He's a leader and a man of God, and that's how he viewed his children. Okay, even though he put the handmaid and her children first, he still loved them. Okay, verse 6. Then the handmaidens came near. Okay, think of the situation. Jacob's there in front of Esau. His family's on this side. Esau's on that side, and now his handmaidens, Jacob's handmaidens, came near. They and their children, and they bowed themselves. Okay, they're all, think about this. This is their uncle, their long-lost uncle that they never met. Sometimes we forget that. So this must have been a moment for Esau as well, seeing his nephews and his one niece. Verse 7, and Leah also with her children came near and bowed themselves, and after came Joseph near and Rachel, and they bowed themselves. Okay, they all came showing respect to Esau. And he said, verse 8, and he said, what meanest thou by all this drove which I met? And he said, these, in other words, Esau saying, what are all these droves of gifts? Why did you send me all these gifts? Jacob says, these are to find grace in the sight of my Lord. Now there's the key there. Though God did choose Jacob to have the birthright and the blessings, Jacob did do it through kind of a mischievous way with his mom. He pretended he was Esau and so forth. And when he got the birthright from Esau was starving to death, and Jacob took advantage of that situation and made him sell his birthright in order to give him food. The right brotherly thing to do would be just to feed your brother, but Jacob didn't do that. So now, no doubt this is in Jacob's mind, okay? I've wronged my brother. Yeah, God chose me, but I didn't do it all necessarily the right way. And now I'm sending you these presents to hopefully find grace in your eyes, to kind of make a peace. It's a peace offering. He's making a peace offering to Esau. Now, this is really neat because this will bring some closure to their dispute after leaving in the heat of the moment 20 years ago. Now they can finally put an end to this bitterness that they had between one another. Verse 9, and Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep that thou hast unto thyself. Okay, so Esau, though he did not receive the blessings of God like Jacob did, he still was a powerful and rich man. Okay, now remember, Esau got his wealth and his power through earthly means. Okay, it wasn't the same as how Jacob got his. Jacob got his by God's blessings and hard work. Okay, Esau was a worldly man, but he's not that much different than a lot of rich worldly people today. There are a lot of similarities between Esau and them. Verse 10, and Jacob said, Nay, I pray thee, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand, for therefore I have seen thy face, as though I had seen the face of God, and thou wast pleased with me. Now, it almost seems as though Jacob's really pouring it on here. I mean, he's looking at Esau, and he's like, when I look at you, it's like looking at the face of God, I think, in part, Jacob was maybe pouring it on a little bit. You can see Jacob was a wise character. But I think he also did see the change in Esau's countenance. His countenance was probably really bright. And for the fact that Esau was so forgiving and so gracious at this moment, that he was showing a character or a trait that God himself has. A lot of grace and forgiveness. All right. Let's continue on. Verse 11, take, I pray thee, my blessing that is brought to thee, because God hath dwelt graciously with me, and because I have enough. And he urged him, and he took it. He wanted to make sure Esau had this peace offering, because if Esau didn't take it, Jacob wouldn't feel like, okay, I've paid my dues, or I've atoned for any wrong ways I might have handled it with my brother. But by Esau accepting this gift, it could be case closed. We're starting fresh. It's all over. New start. Okay? So it was important that Esau took this. And that's why he urged him. Verse 12. And he said, let us take our journey and let us go, and I will go before thee. So Esau here even offers to lead the way. I mean, in Esau's mind, hey, I have 400 strong men with me, and he thinks this is really a nice gesture for Jacob. I'll protect you and your family. But we're going to see what Jacob says here. Verse 13, and he said unto him, my Lord knoweth that the children are tender. Now check this out. My Lord knoweth that the children are tender, and the flocks and herds with young are with me. And if men should, now check this out, underline this, overdrive them, in one day all the flock will die. Now think about that. What does Jacob know? He's the chosen man of God. What else is he? A shepherd. He is a type of like a strong Christian today, or even a pastor, or any kind of elder in Christianity. That's what Jacob is a type of here. Now, what was on Jacob's mind? Well, he knew these 400 men, these were strong men of Esau, would be traveling at a really good clip. And he thought, no, I can't allow that to happen, because my children can't handle that kind of a pace, and neither can the animals. So Jacob was protecting as a shepherd, he was protecting his family, his little ones, and his animals from being overdriven. Now, as Christians today, especially as many of us mature Christians, we want to make sure we don't overdrive the young in Christianity. Whether it be children or somebody that's 70, 80 years old and have just become a Christian, you don't want to put a heavy load on them and expect them to keep up with you. You've been doing it, you've grown to that certain point over years. You didn't just have that hunger and desire for the Word overnight. Think about it this way. Many people that have been a Christian for many years, some of them like to study, let's just say some of them will study like 3 hours or more a day in the Bible. If they demand that that a child or a young person in Christ have that same amount of hunger and demand that they're studying 3 hours a day, that could cause those people to break. That would be overdriving them. It would be trying to make them pull too much weight too soon before they were ready to handle it. Now, at the same time, Jacob didn't stop. He didn't just say, well, I don't want my children to walk. I don't want my animals to walk. They just need to be comforted and protected all the time. No, they still walked, but they walked at a gentle pace. Okay? There was still to be action. It wasn't, don't study the Bible and all type of thing. It's like, no, you need to, I like to tell people is, hey, 15 minutes a day is a good place for anybody to start. And whether it's studying the Bible and or in prayer. Some amount of time per day so that it becomes habitual, so it becomes a habit, and so forth. Okay, anyways, good lesson there we see from Jacob. Verse 15, and Esau said, let me now leave with thee some of the folk that are with me. And that can actually also apply, I'm just going to back up and talk about that a little bit, about overdriving the flock. That can apply to, when you have a certain depth of knowledge in the Bible, things make more sense and you can understand certain things. And we have to be careful sometimes not to, when we're talking about in-depth topics or some topics that some people can't quite understand yet, we don't want to throw the whole thing at them all at once, if they can't handle it. There's got to be a process of gently leading. I did it perfect, didn't I, in our beginning years?
Oh, just amazing.
Just teasing.
I can definitely see the
We had
maturity.
many talks before where I was, pretty zealous and not. I didn't always do it the right way. I still don't, but we have our examples.
Just like our young Jacob right now.
Right. Okay. All right. Verse 15. And Esau said, "Let me now let me now leave with thee some of the folk." I really need reading glasses, but I don't like to wear reading glasses for video recordings. So if I miss a word here and there, that's usually why. I'm trying as long as I can to not have to wear glasses up here. But anyways, and Esau said, "Let me now leave with thee some of the folk that are with me." And he said, "What needeth it? Let me find grace in the sight of my Lord." So Jacob now is rejecting Esau's offer. First, he rejected his offer to lead his family through the land back home. Now Esau says, "Well, I'll just leave you some men to be with you then. They'll go at your pace, and they'll just be there to help you." And then Jacob rejects that offer as well. Why do you think Jacob would reject that? Well, number one, though Jacob had submitted to Esau, he's not going to surrender his freedom to Esau. And if Esau now was all of a sudden his protector and his guider, the guy that guides him, what does that how would that make God feel? Jacob has been trusting in God this whole way. Now what would happen if he started trusting in Esau to protect him? That would not be a good thing, okay? Just as today, though we at times have to submit to various earthly authorities, we don't put our trust in those authorities to guide our lives and to protect our families. We still want our freedom. We still want our autonomy, okay? We don't want to be beholden to somebody else. We want to be beholden to Almighty God and Him alone when it comes to these things, okay? Verse 16, so Esau returned that day on his way unto Seir. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built him an house and made booths for his cattle. Booths would be like shelters, little shelters made of sticks and stuff like that. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth, and Succoth means just that. Booths are little huts made of sticks. So Jacob and Esau here end up in separate places, as we see here, which is good because had they had dwelt together, no doubt problems would have occurred between the brothers again, and Jacob probably knew, okay, I love my brother, I'll make up with him, but I want to keep my distance because if we're around each other too much, things could heat up again, okay? Because number one, Esau married, we found out he married two pagan women, two Canaanite women, who were very, uncouth women, to say the least, and they caused Abraham's family a lot of problems, and he didn't want to be around that. Okay, so in other words, he didn't want to be unequally yoked. Okay, he didn't want to be unequally yoked with his pagan brother here, and any close personal relationship with him could have had very devastating consequences upon Jacob and his family. All right, verse 18, and Jacob came to Shalem, a city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. Okay, he's finally back home. When he came from Padan Aram and pitched his tent before the city. And he bought a parcel of a field where he had spread his tent at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Interesting to note, this is the second piece of land owned by Abraham's family now in the promised land. The first piece of land was bought by Abraham. He purchased a piece of land for Sarah's burial place, his wife Sarah. What's the significance of this? I don't know, but you might find something. I just thought I'd bring it up. Okay, verse 20. And he erected there, now check this out, and what is the first thing Jacob does? He erected there an altar and called it Eliahi Israel. Okay? So think about this. The first thing he did was build an altar to be able to make sacrifices unto God. So, he did it the right way. Time after time we see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob do this, where God blesses them, they get to a certain opening in their life, the things of, God is dealing graciously with them, and the first thing they do is pay respect to God. They thank God for the blessings. And that should be something that we always strive to do in our lives. When God blesses us, to be sure to thank Him for that. Not just take it for granted. For instance, even children. Thank God for our children every day. They're gracious gifts of God. Okay? Gracious gifts that God has given us. And we should never be unthankful for those things. And Jacob was. Anyways, let me see here. In conclusion, we must never forget any of these lessons learned in this chapter, though it doesn't seem like Jacob did anything spectacular. He really did. He avoided conflict. He avoided unnecessary conflict with his long-lost brother. He did the right thing by making a peace offering when he was at some fault. At times in our life, there are times when we need to make peace offerings with those we wrong, or even if it's a perceived wrong, it's best to humble ourselves and just do the right thing to keep the peace. And I will also say this, like I said in the study, though Jacob, displayed all this wisdom and humility and things like that to avert catastrophe, that doesn't mean that we take this story and apply it to every moment in our life just to avoid controversy. Because Jesus told us there would be controversy, and that we're going to have to deal with it. So, with that said, anybody have any questions or comments?
I think it also could have something to do a little bit where you're maybe a little more gentle or a little more careful when it's family versus total strangers or people that you don't really have any relations with. I don't know. You still have to be gentle and use wisdom, but in this case, it was his family, and it was close family. So it's probably why he was a little more overboard with his gentleness and kindness.
And he was technically the younger brother, and back in those days, the elder brother was the guy that was in charge, so to speak. So
yeah, I just think God puts an emphasis on family and how important it is. Same thing here.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Esau was family. He wasn't just, any stranger.
Christian Overcomers is brought to you by the tithes and offerings of our listeners. If you would like to support our ministry, please go to ChristianOvercomers.com. God bless you, and thank you for your support.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible sword. His true